So, what is the best diet for cancer prevention?
Well, I recommend for my patients a whole food plant-based diet and even a plant strong diet. Sometimes when you say plant-based, it kind of freaks people out.
But what does whole food mean?
Whole food plant-based means not vegan. For instance, a lot of people that are quote unquote vegans are some of the unhealthiest people I know. You could be eating Doritos and drinking Coke all day, and you're a vegan because
Yeah,
you're not eating animal protein.
yeah, you're so right. Hey, everybody. Hi, Diane Gilman, proud host of Too Young to Be Old, formerly titled The Queen of Jeans for QVC-HSN, and loving what I'm doing and loving giving you information about every aspect of your life as we march down those years and grow older, but hopefully older with more knowledge and healthier. And today it is truly an exciting honor to introduce to you Dr. Dominic Brandy, who has written an amazing book called Beat Back Cancer Naturally. And he speaks from knowledge because he was diagnosed with a blood cancer, multiple myeloma, over 6 years ago, and beat it back through healthy living and a healthy diet and has been in remission for 6 years. Welcome, Dr. Brandy.
Hey, it's great to be here, Diane.
Excellent title for a book.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
give us a brief synopsis of how you got diagnosed, the treatment you went through, and how you brought yourself back to health naturally through diet and exercise.
Well, my story actually began, it was about 2 months before I actually got diagnosed. I was on a cruise. It was a 2-week cruise, and I've read well over 300 books on health and nutrition. And I went on my Kindle, and there was a book called How Not to Die by Michael Greger. And I don't know if anybody's ever read it, but if you have, it's about an inch thick, and about half of the book are scientific references. And as I was going through the book, the science was showing over and over again that people and cultures and research cohort groups that ate more plant-based had a much lower incidence of cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, et cetera, et cetera. So on the cruise, I started eating whole food plant-based. And my wife thought I was out of my mind because we're on this cruise and there's all this food and desserts and meat. And I just decided at that point I was going to make that change. Well, I came home and I noticed during a surgical case that I was doing, there was a little pop in my right clavicle. And I didn't think a lot of it, but it just kept getting worse and worse. And it started keeping me up at night. And then this was about 2 months after I was on that cruise. My wife and I were watching television, and I accidentally knocked over a container of water. I lunged for it, and my collarbone just cracked right in half.
Oh,
I mean, it was excruciating to say the least.
wow.
So we went to an urgent care center. They did an X-ray. It was completely displaced. I went to a good friend of mine who was an orthopedic surgeon. They did an MRI, and he called me. That happened on a Sunday night. He called me on a Friday and said, Nick, that's my nickname. He said, Nick, I think you either have a metastasis or you have multiple myeloma. So they went ahead and did all kind of testing, biopsy, different lab work, and they found that I did have multiple myeloma. So at that point, my oncologist, he wanted to put me on a triple regimen because the type that I have is the more aggressive type of multiple myeloma. There's basically IgA, IgG, IgM. I had an IgA, which is the most aggressive. And two of them were oral medications. And then there was another medication called Velcade, which is a proteasome inhibitor, which I would have to go in, every week and get a shot in my abdomen. And the more I was reading about it, almost everybody that gets Velcade gets a pretty bad peripheral neuropathy. And
What's that?
a peripheral neuropathy is it's actually a destruction of the myelin that covers the nerves. So
Uh,
you start getting some weird tingling in your feet, in your
yeah.
hands. Then it can actually start affecting your motor function, and so that was a concern. Plus, I had already been eating whole food plant based, and I was 100% sure that that was going to help me. So I rejected the Velcade, and my oncologist, to put it mildly, was very upset with me. He didn't
What?
think I was ever going to get into a complete remission.
Yeah.
At that point, I went into a deep search of the scientific literature, and I wanted to find out everything that I could possibly do. You know, what kind of supplements, what kind of herbs, what kind of lifestyle changes I could make. And I was making these as I was undergoing these two oral medications that I was taking. And every month, my numbers just kept getting better and better. And I would actually post it on my Facebook page, and everybody was kind of fascinated how my numbers were getting better. And then when I got to 6 months, I was actually in a complete remission, and my doctor was blown away by it. Um, and then about a year after I started treatment, I continued to be in a complete remission. And at a year, I decided I wanted to share all this information with the public. So
Oh,
I scheduled a lecture. I had about 125 people come, which I was kind of surprised that many people came. And I actually had a standing ovation for this lecture. I don't think it was that great of a lecture, but there were a lot of cancer patients out there. And I just think that I was giving them hope that
exactly.
they could empower themselves, that they weren't at the mercy of the surgery, the chemo, the radiation. Um, in fact, there were several people that came up to me afterward. There was one woman, she actually had multiple myeloma, and she was definitely obese. I mean, she was very overweight. And she told me that she had asked her oncologist if she should change her diet or lifestyle. And he said, "Oh, no, just keep doing what you're doing." And she looked at me and she said, I know that that can't be right. And that was a common theme of a lot of the cancer patients that were coming up to me afterward. So at that point, I started my website, naturalinsightsintocancer.com. I started an Instagram site, Cancer Veggie Doc. I have over 120,000 followers on that. And I started having monthly meetings at my office. I was getting 50 to 100 people coming every month. Um, and at that point, people kept asking me to write a book. And that's when I decided uh, to write Beat Back Cancer Naturally. And
Which is fantastic. And I want to say that and it really wasn't even my oncologist, my surgeon, who is famous and has written 5 bestsellers for the New York Times called Navigating Breast Cancer, said these words to me of wisdom: don't get fat. That was the key to keeping the cancer at bay once it was in remission. And that's all. Just don't get fat. Well, how do you not get fat? And
yeah,
I 30 pounds from steroids during chemo, which shot my blood pressure through the roof. It was so dangerous. But nobody said, here's what you should eat to back off the blood pressure. Here's what you should do to counter the steroid water weight. So you're left thinking to yourself, okay, don't get fat. That reminds me of Nancy Reagan with that whole drug thing in
yeah,
the radio where it was just say no. Oh, yeah, sure. I'll do that. Because you know what? I think many Americans have addictions like I do to certain foods that are not real great for you. But one thing I did figure out was keep it organic as much as you can. And there is a huge argument going on about eating animal proteins, but they have all these um, estrogen levels in them that are so dangerous for breast cancer. It is so confusing that I am going to ask you a very pointed question. Hi, it's Diane Gilman. Guess what? If you are in the same bucket I'm in, which is women over 50, and you're thinking to yourself, how do I find out the best products to use? Maybe you've heard me talk about Purity Woods, and maybe you've asked me, I don't know, Diane, why do you love it? I'll tell you. Your skin is your passport to your visual to the world. If your skin is glowy, if your skin is healthy, you just generally look younger and are treated as a more vibrant personality. Why do I like Purity Woods? 100% organic. There is so much pollution in the air, so much pollution even if I go to wash my face with tap water. So many chemicals. I truly appreciate products that not only feel pure, but the scent of Purity Woods is just unbelievably refreshing. So, you know what? Give it a try. Get a discount using the code in the caption. Purity Woods. I love these products, and two of my very favorites from Purity Woods are the makeup remover, the exfoliator, which is just sort of like magic. So, also, ladies, remember one more thing. As we age past 50, we do not turn over our skin cells as quickly as we did in our 20s, 30s, or 40s. You need not only a great makeup remover, but you need a great exfoliator to urge new skin cells to come to the fore. Purity Woods, they've got it all. Okay, so what is the best diet for cancer prevention or remission maintenance?
Well, I recommend for my patients a whole food plant-based diet, and even a plant-strong diet. Sometimes when you say plant-based, it kind of freaks people out.
But what does whole food mean?
Whole food plant-based means not vegan. For instance, a lot of people that are quote unquote vegans are some of the unhealthiest people I know. You could be eating Doritos and drinking Coke all day, and you're a vegan because
Yeah,
you're not eating animal protein.
you're so right.
Yeah, so a whole food plant-based diet is, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains. So that's basically what I eat. I like this morning. I had a multi-grain waffle. I had raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, blueberries on it with bananas. I had some watermelon. I had some grapes, some pineapple, and that was my breakfast this morning. So that's basically how I eat. And what I do to try to bring this into mainstream, I mean, the National Cancer Institute recommends 9 servings of fruits and vegetables for the prevention of cancer. So I tell even oncologists, I say, why don't you tell your patients to at least eat 9 servings of fruits and vegetables? I mean, if you have cancer, personally, I think you should be eating a hell of a lot more than 9 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, but I think you should be eating at least that many. And a recent study that came out through the CDC found that the average American only eats 1.8 servings of fruits and vegetables per day.
You're looking at an average American. I was just saying to somebody, I buy it all and I put it in the refrigerator thinking, pat on the back, Diane, shopping healthy. And it ends there. And then what do I end up throwing out after 3 weeks? All the good intention food I bought. I could never be totally vegan. I try to at least do 3 to 4 days a week that is plant based. But I was raised on meat. I'm first generation American, and my parents came over from Ukraine and Russia at the turn of the last century, around 1906. And the entire measure of success was you had meat on the table 7 days a week. It's hard to get away from that.
Oh yeah, but there have been many substitution studies. For instance, there's actually 3 good 16-year substitution studies. There was one done in Japan where they took 70,000 people. They followed them for 16 years. And they basically just changed 3% animal protein for 3% plant protein. And they lowered their cardiovascular disease by 42%.
Wow.
And there was another large study. It was 400,000 people, and they did the exact same thing. It was 3% animal protein. They switched it to plant protein, and it decreased premature mortality by 10%. And then the final one, and I think everybody agrees on this, was a 16-year study where they basically took one group that was eating mainly whole foods, and then the other group, a lot of ultra processed foods,
Yeah.
donuts and Doritos and things like that. And they had a 62% higher mortality, premature mortality
Oh,
rate. And it was primarily cancer. So I think everybody agrees. You get into all these arguments on social media, keto versus vegan versus paleo, et cetera. I think everybody agrees that we have to cut back on the ultra processed foods because they definitely are very damaging to health.
and yet I know families where the children, and you talk to a mother that has a full-time job and has 3 kids, and you talk to them about the foods they feed their family, and they look at you like you are the Antichrist because they'll say, "Are you kidding me? I'm going to come home from 9 hours at work, taking care of 3 rambunctious kids and roast a chicken. No, I'm going to stop at Chick-fil-A and buy a huge family meal and bring it home." And so I will say to you that from the time I was a really little girl and we were Jewish, every Friday we would go to the kosher butcher. There'd be a bunch of chickens running around. Wah, 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 wah. You picked your chicken. I was allowed to pick the chicken until I realized I was murdering the chicken. Then I let my mother pick the chicken after that. And they would behead the chicken and pluck out all the feathers, and that would be really as direct farm to table as you could
Oh,
get.
yeah.
But my friend, I said to her, "Do you realize that your children, and you're doing the best for them you can, have never seen the actual animal that their food came from? Like, as good as Chick-fil-A tastes, it is chopped up chickens made into chicken nuggets, breaded. You don't know what part of the chicken it was. You don't know how the chicken was raised, pasture raised, doubt it. You don't know what the seasonings are, what the oils are that went into it. We have caved in to flavor and convenience and gone so far down that rabbit hole that unless you are eating direct, I don't think you know what you're eating. And there could be a million carcinogens in the foods that are prepared that you love. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. Um, Usually what I recommend to, patients, if they're going to eat meat, I usually recommend like a fatty fish, like a wild caught salmon or,
Yeah.
like anchovy, sardines.
Which
I think that's your best choice. However, one of the things that we're finding is that seafood actually is one of the more contaminated animals because the waterways are just so contaminated now. In fact,
yeah.
in my book, I have a study of wild caught salmon outside of Seattle. And what they did is they analyzed the fat tissue to see what was bioaccumulated in the fat tissue of the salmon. And they found there were 81 different prescription drugs actually
Whoa.
bioaccumulated in the tissue. I mean, there were narcotics, amphetamines, antidepressants. I mean, it's unbelievable. So that's why when I'm coaching people that have cancer, I usually try to encourage them to go whole food plant based, just 100%. If they can't do it, that's fine. I use the word plant strong. If you can maybe switch out, some of your animal protein for, plant protein. That's definitely going to benefit you.
What is plant protein? Like
Well,
everybody
plant protein is,
else be
well, well,
vegetarian.
really, almost all plants have protein.
Oh
But,
yeah?
most people don't realize like an ear of corn has 5 grams of protein. A baked potato has 5 grams of protein. I mean, people don't realize that. But if you eat a lot of legumes, if you eat nuts, seeds, whole grains, I mean, you're getting plenty of protein. Even blackberries, a cup of blackberries has 2 grams of protein. So there's no way that you can become protein deficient eating a whole food plant-based diet. I mean, just think about it. Some of the largest animals on the planet are plant-based.
Yeah,
When you eat grass-fed cattle or cows, you eat a steak. That's a grass-fed. All that cow's eating is grass. Um, how does that grass become protein? One of the things we are finding, and there was a really good study in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. I mean, they actually tracked cornmeal and sugar. This was a rodent study, and they did carbon radioactive tracing, and they actually found that the sugar in the cornmeal went all the way down into the large colon, and the bifidobacteria in the large colon actually converted the sugar in the cornmeal into essential amino acids. And then they followed it all the way up through the bloodstream. It got incorporated into protein, and then
good. Is that bad? What is that?
no, that's good. So what it means is when you're eating whole food plant based, if there's just no way you're going to be protein deficient. It's just impossible.
I always hear two things. First of all, I found for me, because I have a terrible problem with portion control, that doing a partial fast every day, going for about 12 hours to 16 hours without food, just works best for me. I'm an older girl. I don't want to stuff my body with a lot of food. But I never get anything but this reaction. What? You're just eating vegetables? You're going to die. You need meat. I keep thinking, I don't think I need red meat. And the other thing is, when I got off of red meat, I went to chicken, and then I'm told, like, are you crazy? It's got all these estrogen based hormones in it, and that is the worst thing you can do. And then you're left thinking, oh. And then I hear that fish, like salmon, it's very hard to even find wild salmon anymore. It's all farm raised, which I don't
Right.
want. Um, that holds tons of mercury, and you are really left thinking to yourself, oh my God, everything that we are surrounded by is dangerous. You don't know what decisions to make and or undo. And all you want to do, honestly, is stay healthy. So the next question I'm going to ask is, you say that phytonutrients, which is what is that, doctor, actually kill cancer cells. Explain that to me and my
Well,
audience.
well, most people don't realize when you look at a label, for instance, they'll have vitamin C, vitamin A, riboflavin, things like that. How much fiber, etc. But what most people don't realize, there was a podcast I listened to by Jed Fahey. He's one of the international experts on phytonutrients. He actually feels there's over 5 million phytonutrients in edible plants. Um, we've only studied about 150 of them. Most experts agree there's at least 100,000 phytonutrients. So things like isoflavones, polyphenols. I mean, I think everybody's heard of those.
Yeah.
They're all phytonutrients. So they're basically the chemicals that give color to food.
Oh, okay.
That give the reds, the blues. For instance, anthocyanins give that purple color to like blueberries and grapes, for example. The yellows, the oranges, the carotenoids, and so forth. But in my book, I go through all the different things that phytonutrients do. I mean, they've been shown to uh, cause cancer cell suicide. They disrupt cancer cell signaling. For instance, turmeric alone disrupts about 80 different cancer signaling pathways. And so turmeric's one supplement that I really recommend just about everybody take, because there are very potent phytochemicals in there. I think everybody's heard of curcumin, but turmeric, for example, has over 300 phytonutrients. It has zingerone, coumarone. I mean, there's all these other phytonutrients in there. In fact, I usually recommend when people take a turmeric supplement, they actually take the whole turmeric rather than it being standardized to 95% curcumin, because all of these phytonutrients actually work synergistically. So if you, for instance, I'll give you an example of a study where they actually applied a grape extract to breast cancer cells, and it killed about 25% of the cancer cells. Then they applied onion extract, killed about 50%. So then they did a 50-50 mixture, and you would think it would kill like maybe 33%, somewhere in between. No, it killed 75%. So there was like a synergistic effect. So that's one of the reasons I really recommend to patients to eat a variety of different fruits and vegetables, because they actually, all these phytochemicals work synergistically. The other reason that I think that eating plant foods versus animal foods is really important for cancer patients is that plant foods have 63 times the
So
antioxidant power compared to animal products.
I was going to ask you, because something that it is amazing to me that I live in a very sophisticated city with some of the best hospitals in the world, and yet they never talk about any of this ever. They don't give you any prevention for afterwards, how to navigate what is the best thing to eat. But one thing that I'm fascinated by for you is you believe that there are many teas out there that are probably pretty easy for us to buy, that are actually can be termed as workable for cancer prevention. And I'm wondering if you could just get into that for a couple of minutes and name a few of those, like something I could have every afternoon where I felt like I was helping my system to fight back whatever cancer cells are traveling around in it after a double mastectomy and 8 months of chemo.
Well, one of the things that I think everybody should do, period, I don't care if you're a cancer patient or not, is try to eat a salad every day with as many different vegetables as possible. One of the things that I strongly recommend people to do that aren't going to go whole food plant based, try to eat about 30 different plant foods per week. There's a huge study that's being carried out in Colorado. It's called the American Gut Project. And Dr. Robert Knight is spearheading this. And he wanted to see what diet was best for the gut microbiome, because we do know that the 37 trillion bacteria in your large colon,
Woo!
it controls about 70% of your immune function. So
Wow.
what they found is they analyzed over 15,000 stool samples, and they found that the individuals that were eating at least 30 different plant foods per week had the healthiest, most diverse gut microbiome. And the people that were eating 10 or less had the least healthy and the least diverse microbiome. And that's really not that hard to do. For instance, when you make a salad, when I make a salad, I probably have about 20 different vegetables in there. So I'm up 20 just with that salad. If you make a soup, like a vegetable soup, for example, I mean, you could easily put like 10 different vegetables in there. Now you're up to 30. So it's really not that hard to do. And that really does include spices. So it's for somebody that doesn't want to go whole food plant based, I think that's a realistic goal for people.
Really attractive. What I like to do is do a baking potato and not put cheese in it, but do the healthy equivalent of an overstuffed, twice baked potato and put a lot of vegetables that have color into it And I love sauteed onion, but I know that you have recommended drinking teas as a healthful way to balance out your system, but also as a deterrent. And so I do have to ask, what teas would you recommend for really healthy living?
Well, in my book, I have there's 4 different teas, and I've actually added another one. And red clover is actually a great one for breast cancer patients. That's the one that I actually added. But I actually developed an oncology support tea mixture that I actually have on my website.
Ooh.
Natural insights into cancer. So what I was doing, I was putting all these different tea bags in the teacup, and it was like the tea bags are coming out. It was just
Yeah.
horrendous. And I actually had a patient recommend that I put all these teas together. So I right now I just take a kind of a tablespoon of my tea mixture, and then I add water. I add lemon and lime juice. But the ones in my mixture are, I think green tea is absolutely important. If you're going to drink
I,
one tea, that's the one that I would recommend
okay.
for the prevention of cancer, or if you have it, you're trying to prevent it. The other ones I have in there are hibiscus, chamomile tea, dandelion, which is really the most potent antioxidant tea. And one of the things I have found in my research is that foods that have the highest antioxidant concentration actually have the greatest cancer killing activity. For instance, walnuts and pecans, in a study in Cornell, they showed of all the 10 most common nuts, those 2 had the most
Huh.
powerful anti-cancer activity against liver and colon cancer. And then in a different study, they looked at the antioxidant concentration of different nuts. And it wasn't surprising to me, but walnuts and pecans have the highest antioxidant power of any nut.
So
So
can we go to your
that's
website and find out all this great information, all this useful
well,
information?
if they read my book, Beat Back Cancer Naturally, I have a lot of it. But I have an Instagram site. It's called Cancer Veggie Doc, where I do an educational video every 4th post. So I have hundreds of videos on my Instagram site, and then I post those on my website too, naturalinsightsintocancer.com. So I'm always educating, because you're not going to change your diet unless you're educated. Why would somebody give up chicken wings uh, for a salad if they don't know why they're doing it? So,
Yeah, yeah,
so education is really super, super important.
yeah. And until it seems to me, and we in this country go for fast, efficient, convenient, flavorful over healthful. And until the general public has some knowledge of what they're doing to themselves and their children, they're going to go on eating that way. And I remember, because I'm old enough, when it was considered healthy to smoke cigarettes. It
Oh,
were
yeah.
that was really good. And it took about 35 years and keep pounding away at the industry, and finally have people who left the industry and had enough courage to turn around and say, hey, wait a minute, this is all false, to get us to recede from smoking and tobacco. um, I think there will come a day, doctor, and hopefully it's sooner than later, when somebody is going to say fast food is shortening your lifestyle, your lifespan, destroying your health span, and giving you diseases that are very difficult to fight, like cancer. And you may not want to hear it as the public, but eventually it is going to sink in that we are all going to have to pivot on the way we see and judge and choose ingestibles. And being a fellow cancer patient in remission like you, I don't have to tell my audience cancer is not fun. It had some good points to it, and it really changed my life and my evaluation of how precious every moment was. But it was a hell of a way to come to that conclusion. Right?
Absolutely. One of the other things that I think people need to change, and it has become kind of part of our culture, is alcohol consumption,
Yeah.
especially with breast cancer. I mean, we know for sure that even moderate alcohol consumption increases your chance of getting breast cancer. And if you have it, or if you're in remission, you definitely should not be doing that. I mean, with most oncologists, even that are even conventional, I know David Chan out at Stanford. They have very high survival rates. And one of the reasons they do the same chemotherapeutic regimens and aromatase inhibitors and so forth, but they do incorporate certain lifestyle changes. They tell people uh, to get into ideal weight. Exercise is like incredibly important. In fact, there was a really good study that I actually just posted on my Instagram where breast cancer patients that were in remission, if they just walked 1 mile per day, they lowered their relapse rate by 24%. If they jogged 2/3 of a mile, they lowered it by 40%. If they jogged 2.3 miles, they lowered it by 95%.
Yeah. And
So
I was,
exercise is critical. The other thing you mentioned it before is intermittent fasting.
yeah.
In my book, I actually had one of the first studies that was ever done on that. It was actually done for breast cancer, and they broke them into two groups. One fasted for 13 or more hours per day, and one did 13 or less. And the group that fasted 13 or more, they had a 36% lower relapse rate. So that's another thing. I mean, I actually eat all my food in an 8 hour window. Like I
too.
yeah, it's like 12:40 right now in Pittsburgh. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to have my breakfast. But
Yeah. Me too.
I eat all my food like pretty much within a like an 8 hour window.
And
And what that does is that gives your body a chance to repair DNA. And we do know that it's really DNA mutations that cause a lot of these relapses and cancer in the first place. So when you give your body a chance to rest, you're getting a lot of DNA repair, and then something that's called autophagy is going on,
yeah,
where the body's cleaning up a lot of debris.
my body appreciates it. The food, I don't want food to weigh me down too much, and I know I've got a problem with portion control. So for me, I can't eat little portions every hour and a half. It's sort of, I have a little bit of breakfast, I have a lunch slash dinner. I'm finished eating by 2 to 3 p.m. every day. And that's also better for me as a 79-year-old. I feel like I have time to digest it. I don't get acid reflux. I could talk to you forever, but we've got to say goodbye.
Okay. All
So
right.
I have to tell everybody, but I don't really have to tell you that Dr. Brandy and his book, Beat Back Cancer Naturally, is invaluable, fascinating. Go see him and visit his Instagram. This is the future here today. And the more we educate, the more we improve our lifespan and what I love to call our health span. Dr. Dominic Brandy, I thank you so much. I just learned golden nugget after golden nugget of information in this podcast. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.